Call the Caroline County School Board meeting for April 9, 2024. We have all representatives present and accounted for from all 6 districts. We have a quorum, correct? Yes, ma'am. And we will now entertain a motion for approval. And I would entertain a motion to amend the agenda to include discussion regarding the HVAC system at the Caroline Middle School. Second. Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, please call for the vote.
Dr. Armstrong.
Aye.
Mr. Taylor.
Aye.
Dr. Hubbard.
Aye.
Mr. Fortune.
Aye.
Ms. Sears. Aye. Mr. Miller.
Aye. Motion passes. Approval of the agenda as amended. Is there a motion?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, please call for the vote.
Ms. Sears.
Aye.
Mr. Fortune.
Aye.
Dr. Hubbard.
Aye.
Mr. Taylor.
Aye.
Dr. Armstrong.
Aye.
Mr. Kelly.
Aye. Motion passes.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and reconvene the March 26, 2024 Board of Supervisors meeting. Let the record state that we have 5, Mr. Underwood is walking in now, so we have 5 of the 6 supervisors present physically. Mr. Seeley has notified me that he is unable to attend the meeting because he had to go out of town unexpectedly for work. So in accordance with our electronic board meeting policy, I just need a vote from the board to allow Mr. Seeley, if he he's not here yet, but if he does come in, can we just go ahead and get this over now to allow him to come in? So I will need a vote. I need a motion from someone to allow Mr. Seeley to join remotely.
So moved.
Need a second. All right, motion is second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries. All right, we have a request from the school board to discuss the HVAC system. It's on our regular agenda. I had told Mr. Parton and Mr. Cully to keep it off the agenda for the work session because we are discussing it at our regular meeting. So if there is a motion to amend the agenda to include the HVAC system, I will take it.
I'll make a motion to amend our agenda.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to amend the agenda to include the HVAC system. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
Division in the House, Mr. Underwood?
Nay.
Mr. Forehand?
Aye.
Mr. Thomas?
I would aye.
Mrs. Long?
Aye.
And I will vote aye as well. All right, so the motion carries. We will discuss that. The motion is agenda. All right, so the amendment is agenda. So I just need a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, the motion carries. All right, so now our first item is the 2024 budget discussion.
Yes. Dr. Tubbard, to start us off.
Certainly. I just want to orient you for a moment to the items that are within your folder so that everyone is aware of what may be referred to during this conversation. The first item is a document that the school board has put together along with, of course, senior staff to really give you some additional details associated with some of the budget priorities that we had outlined when we came to you in February and presented this brochure and the accompanying presentation. You know that when we come to you in February, we are charged by the Code of Virginia to present a needs-based budget. And then as the budget starts to evolve even further or be modified and massaged, we start paring back or we start modifying based on new information. So I do want to let you know that what we'll be focusing on this evening does not include all of these items that were originally noted on the left side of the internal panel of this brochure. We have currently eliminated the transportation routing system, the receptionist, and the increased school-based appropriations. Not because they are not needs, but because we feel that the others have greater impact on our student population and our staff, and we feel that's where our energies need to be focused while we're working hip to hip with you. So I just wanted to make sure you were cognizant of why each of these wasn't being addressed this evening. Also within the folder, you will see this dollar bill that should look familiar to you. This is something that we pulled from your presentation, or specifically Mr. Cully, the county administrator's presentation at the last Board of Supervisors meeting. And then what we did was we took our budget priorities and we listed each of the items associated with them. So you will see the compensation is priority 1, what the approximate costs are for each of the aspects associated with compensation, and then related data that we thought might help the Board of Supervisors better understand why it is such a critical need or a mandatory need for CCPS. And then on the right-hand side, we did pull Caroline County data to demonstrate some of the initiatives that have occurred over the past years in relation to salary and how we can hope tonight to adopt a similar approach to what's been used for the county for schools. On page 2, and each of our board members is prepared to go into greater depth. On page 2, it's just a reminder associated with, if you look at the second row from the bottom, the funding we've received over 6 fiscal years for positions, and that is just a precursor to the 2 next budget priorities. And those are special education positions, and the third priority are general education positions. You know, and you've talked many times over about the growth that is occurring. We are seeing exponential growth not only in our student population, but also in our special needs population as well. And so the demands are increasing both for intensity of disabilities, but the quantity of IEPs that we're also serving. So we want to be able to share that with you. And then the fourth priority is transportation. You are keenly aware and are experiencing some of the difficulties of filling positions, such as bus drivers and car drivers. And ultimately, we are making the request for 30 of our part-time drivers to move to full-time, and that will be explained further. And then the fifth priority is, of course, safety, and that is the 2 SSOs. And that really stemmed from all of the investigative process as well as survey data that we've done with our community and our stakeholder groups, where they were interested in weapons detection systems, but those are very cost prohibitive at this time. So SSOs are relationship builders, but also boots on the ground, and we felt that that was a great secondary option to move in the direction of enhanced safety. So that is a document that each of our board members will be referring to. And beyond that, hot off the press, yesterday, the governor did release a common ground budget. The highlights associated with this for schools: 3% in year 1 of the biennium and 3% in year 2 of the biennium. And then there was increased at-risk add-on from the initial governor's budget, but it is slightly less than what the General Assembly proposed. So it is kind of a common ground in relation to at-risk add-on. We did provide you with what we thought was the current calc tool, but as of yesterday, this is actually null and void. So we could pull it out and fold it knowing that we'll end up getting a new one. And that really is what we thought would be beneficial to have as resources today.
I did have a question. The governor is giving a 3% raise for all teachers or standard of quality?
You know, Mr. Thomas, it is always standards of quality, which of course then puts a greater liability on the local entity, of course.
This just says for teachers, so it doesn't say SOQ.
Yeah, it is. Well, we believe it's standards of quality. It is inclusive of all of those positions.
All right.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And it's unfortunate. I know we need to lobby together in relation to that standard of quality formula.
Could you give me a definition on what you include in your 472 students with disabilities? Are those just those that need paraprofessionals and help, or are those including students with reading issues that need extra coaching and care? What's included in that 742?
Can I orient myself? Are you currently on budget priority 2 for special education positions?
I am on this one that you just gave out.
Okay. So
and it is general fund with your dollar bill.
Yes, okay, so we'll go, and that is budget priority 2. So yes, we have 742 students with disabilities. It represents 13 special ed classifications. Paulette Heron, I believe, may be in the room. She's our Director of Special Education. She can explain to you exactly what that figure entails. If you would stand and please come forward, and then I will turn it over to the board members to communicate about each of these items.
Sure, good evening. So our 742, as you see, we have had a lot of growth here in Caroline County. In the state of Virginia, we service all 13 disability categories. In Caroline County, we have all 13 disability categories. So that growth encompasses all of those.
And what are the 13 disabilities? Are they by those that are very severe that need aides with them all the time, to those who need extra coaching for reading?
It's someone that's on a two grades behind in reading level with an IEP. Is that part of the 742?
Yes, so those students qualify underneath the Individuals with Disabilities Act. So you have students that have intellectual disabilities, LD, so specific learning disabilities. Also, you have students with autism, so a spectrum for students with autism, students with hearing impairment, orthopedic impairment. We have several students that are in wheelchairs that we service as well. Visual impairment, hearing impairment, deaf and hard of hearing, that we also provide services to. And this incorporates not only the instructional piece, but also the related services. So they also require OT, PT, speech, all of those therapeutic things as well.
Thank you.
There was a second question over here that Mr. Black asked, and I think it would be beneficial for everyone to be cognizant of. 504s do not fall under IDEA, the Individualized Education Act for IEP students. 504s are the ADA, and that's separate, and that is actually noted a few rows down. You'll be able to see those numbers are growing drastically as well. So thank you, Ms. Heron, appreciate that.
Okay.
Number of full-time FTEs that work in special ed.
Currently, we have 47 teachers that work with students with disabilities.
That's full.
That's full-time teachers, 47.
Okay. Do you have any part-time folks who would equal up to FTE?
We would love to be able to have some part-time folks, but right now we have 47 full-time folks. Yes,
Okay.
sir. Mm-hmm.
If you look at the row labeled SPED Novice Teacher Coach, it shows that we have 5 special ed full-time teacher vacancies currently, 6 first-year special ed teachers, but 45% of the 47 special education teachers are applying for or are provisionally licensed, which means that they're within the first 3 years of their teaching experience. So that is why we're asking for that novice teacher coach, because we have so many people that are passionate about the work but are very green in their level of experience and exposure to coursework.
Do you have students who are transported out of school for services as well?
So those students would fall under our private day residential. They are part of that 742 in that count.
So they don't receive services in school, they receive it out of school, right? Since they're
They
transported.
receive them in our private day. Some of them receive related services
right,
from
like
us.
OT, right, I got you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have an idea how many students we transport out?
Currently, we have 32 students in private day residential. And remember, private day residential is a regional program.
Right.
So our region falls, I believe, from Maine to Florida if we have to place a student for residential.
Could be,
Yes.
depending on the IEP.
Yes, depending on
The
the
legal
impact of
document, right?
disability. Yes, sir.
Gotcha.
Great questions. At this time, I'll turn it over. I think Dr. Rollins Fells has brought budget priority number 1, which is compensation, or Mr. Kelly. It's your tag teaming. I'm not sure who's up.
You start, I'll jump in.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. This evening, I'm going to talk about priority number 1, which is on the first page. And this is really just addressing our total compensation. This is not a new conversation for us. We both agree that we have to take care of our people that are serving our students. And so our priority here is to really look at the full implementation of the salary study in step 2. And so what you'll see in the chart, and I won't read it to you, There are different levels. So salary study step 2, what does that look like? The second column includes that 3% and a step. As you all know, our contracts are on a step basis, and so that increment aligns with years of service, and so we want to make sure that we honor that. The third line there addresses the health insurance. That is something that we monitor yearly. We know that there's increases some years there are decreases, and so you can see the increase there. And then the last component really deals with stipends. So if there are teachers who have their master's degree or other levels of credentials, we do award a stipend. We have stipends for department heads or leads, grade level chairs, for our coaches, and for our clubs. And those stipends have not been increased over the last 10 years. So I think that we can all agree that things have a different cost than what they have now, 10 years ago. And so we really like to look at that. So if you look at the stipend total down at the bottom, or the totals at the bottom, you'll see step 2 plus the health increase plus the stipend, and you'll see the total with the 3% plus the step, the health insurance, and the stipend. Over on the far right, just as a high-level overview, we know that having 700 employees is often equated to a big sticker price, and that is because we have so many people that we need to cover in terms of compensation and health insurance. And so what staff did here was really look at taking that number, disaggregating it, and then coming up with what does this look like in terms, if all things were equal, in comparison to the same approach with county employees. And so that's what you see there under calculating average salaries.
I'd just like to add, I don't think we have 300 employees. You're 700 full-time employees.
So
That's a question. 700 full-time employees.
we have 700 employees, and my understanding is that is a mix of.
Correct. Well, I think that 300 employees is full-time.
Okay.
So I think you're leaving all my part-time people out.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
We have FTEs of approximately 696 to 700 full-time.
Okay. So the last line, if you could look at that. No worries. What I would like to draw your attention to is the last bullet in the last box. And that says 1 CCPS step cost annually. And so we know in order to honor the contracts that we have and giving employees a step based on their years of service, what we are estimating is that annual cost equates to $611,000. And that's a true number. So when we come to the table and we are advocating for employee compensation, that is a base number that we know that would ballpark to be able to allow the increase in the step. That does not take in consideration the 45 positions that are substantially below the regional market and those other pieces that we are looking to address. So that is the overview of why we are asking for the compensation. We want to be able to, of course, address the health insurance. We want to make sure that we honor the step increase. We have to plan for the 3%, and we want to be able to implement step 2 of the salary study.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is that just like the county did their own salary study and looked regionally where they were competitive, found that they were deficient, and very quickly you developed a plan, you implemented the plan, and you're starting to get caught up. That's what we are attempting to do with our staff as well. And hopefully we can do it just as quickly as the county did with their employees.
Question. Of this approximate cost, how much is covered by the state?
Which cost?
The salary studies and the cost. So this is all local funds you're asking for? The state's giving you 3% extra money for salaries this year.
Yeah, well, for the SOQ positions.
How much is that, and is that in here?
Based on the GA budget, 685,512, we did consider state funding when we presented the budget with a $3.6 million gap.
So that's not in here, is what you're saying? Or is it in here?
These are totals. We have a $3.6 million gap when we included all of our priorities.
Yeah, they've included state money.
So that includes.
No, it would seem that it would be 4.2 million, including state money, or it's 3 million. One without, yeah, one or the other. It can't be this number.
When we presented all of our priorities.
Remember, they got other things, new people.
Yeah. To the Board of Supervisors, based on the governor's proposed budget, we had a $3.6 million gap.
Everything they asked for, plus the state money, they were missing 3.6.
Any additional questions about number one? All right, number two, budget priority special education. Mr. Taylor?
Yes, thank you. A lot of the questions that you had have probably been touched on already. So I stayed up all night with this presentation, and then y'all did it before I got here. Not really. But special education, as is with all of our entities, is a very important part of educating students. And special education is dictated to us, in many instances by the federal government and state government. The Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or we commonly refer to as the IDEA, guarantees a free, appropriate public education to all eligible children with disabilities. This means that they are designed to have instruction to meet the needs of the students, regardless as to what those needs may be. And sometimes they run into very serious expenses. But it's not something we can negotiate, it's something we have to do. And I don't know that we would negotiate it even if we could, because we want to do what's right, and we want every student in this county to get a quality education, and we want to do the best that we can to see that they get that. Individuals with Disabilities Act requires each state to report to the public on the state level data and individual school division level data, and to report on whether the state and the division met state targets described in the state special education state performance plan and the annual performance report. In other words, they don't just take our word for it. They want to see it in writing, and we have to provide that information. School divisions are required to submit information and data for reporting, monitoring, and compliance. There are 14 different indicators that are required. As of December 1 count, school divisions are required to report an unduplicated count of students with disabilities receiving special education on December 1 for state funding and federal reporting under provisions of the Individuals with Disabilities Act. And then we've talked a little bit about the 504 plan, which is based on eligibility under Rehabilitation Act of 1973 and not IDA. A child has to be identified as a student, or a child may be identified as a student with a disability under statute. And if they have a mental or physical impairment that limits their major life activity, this is required under the Americans with Disabilities Act. So again, it's not things that we choose to do, even though we would choose to do it even if we didn't have to. Because we want, as I say, to educate every student in this county to the best that we can. I would just reiterate why we have to have a needs-based budget. I mean, those are things that are needs, and when we build our budget, it's built on needs. Students with special needs are sometimes a grave financial impact, but it's something that we have to do, and we appreciate your help in helping us to meet that goal. again, it's not negotiable. And we wouldn't negotiate even if we could. I've been in education ever since I was born. I graduated from this building in 1969, and I've been in some form of education ever since. And I'm 73 years old. And I know that education is the thing that is going to make us continue to be the great county that we are. And if we don't do it, we are doing a disservice to our children. We're doing a disservice to our community. We're doing a disservice to this country. We need to fund these issues, and we need to find ways to do it that works for all of us. Thank you.
So if you don't mind, Dr. Calvert, wanted to say something real quick.
Thank you. We all know that IDEA is an unfunded mandate. It is grossly underfunded. And I think a perfect example, without going into specifics and protecting confidentiality, is throughout this year, we have obviously had a great influx of students, but to demonstrate to you the level of need that we have within our school buildings, we had multiple students that had multiple handicaps and were potentially even wheelchair bound come and register. And within a 2-week period, we needed to add a classroom, which required space, which we did not have. So we had to relocate people. We had to hire a teacher, which we could not find. And so we had to go out to a third-party vendor to secure. And we had to hire 4 paraprofessionals because to do lifts out of wheelchairs requires a 2-man effort. So that was within a 2-week period, the expense associated with a handful of students who we were so grateful to receive because it's their first schooling experience in Caroline. But we needed to do our very best to service them. And that's just one example of the expense. No dollars or cents came with them when they registered, but we opened our doors and we ensured that we had what we need. So that alone helps drive the why behind we need the continued funding of 5 teachers, 5 paraprofessionals, the novice teacher coach to help support the influx of novice teachers, and the growth in 504 plans. You know, people coming out of COVID have gone to the physicians, and students are coming to school with greater needs, and they're coming out with this legal document that helps them receive accommodations to address whether it's executive functioning, attention, medical needs. And so we just need some more boots on the ground with expertise to make sure that we're meeting their needs that are legally outlined. Thank you.
If I could just add a
Yes,
comment to that, this is also a place where we do not want to find ourselves out of compliance because of the legality that comes with it. So.
Yeah. Any additional questions or comments? All right, hearing none. Yes, sir.
The ratio of 742 to the whole body, is it fairly consistent amongst the divisions?
Are we about 15% students with disabilities out of our whole student population?
15.3, I think is what it is. 15.3.
And is that within a range within the state?
Within the localities that are our size, everybody's a
A
little.
ratio is a ratio, doesn't matter how big you are. But
So I would say yes.
okay.
And I would confirm, just reviewing Spotsylvania's last night, they're right there in the same range based on their population.
And I dare say prior to COVID, everyone was averaging around 12 to 13. And post-COVID, there is an increase. It's just a reality.
Yep. Understood. I just didn't know if we were on the low end, if we were on the high end, if we were
Middle of the pack.
in the band somewhere. You know.
Yeah, good question.
Any additional questions or comments? Hearing none, moving on to budget priority 3, the general education positions with Dr. Hubbard.
Good evening, leaders. I would begin by saying we're going to move from the strategic level to the tactical level. I define that as boots on the ground, those who are in the trenches, the teachers who are impacting students every single day. If you look at the priorities that are listed here, you can see that we're looking to, 1, comply with the law, as well as meet our ratio requirement. We've got 4 teachers that we're looking to employ at Lewis and Clark, 2 at the middle school, and 1 at the high school. You can see the explanation for those requests. Lewis and Clark, this is a ratio issue that we have to ensure that the teacher to student ratio is within guidelines with the Virginia Code. And that is pretty clear. There's no deviation from that.
It is also an equity issue. Lewis and Clark, because there are over 1,000 students and they only have 1 art, music, library, and innovation specialist, they are only seeing their students once every 6 days. Every other school is on a 5-day rotation. So now not only do we have compliance we're looking at, but now we have inequities amongst our 3 elementary schools. Excuse me.
And that pretty much reinforces also the enrollments that we have at the middle school, which is why we're also looking for the 2 additional staff members there. Moving to the math specialists at Lewis and Clark Elementary School. Currently, we have specialists at both Bowling Green Elementary and Madison Elementary. We do not have one at Lewis and Clark. Again, let's look at test scores. We need to have this subject matter expert at this location. We have them to build those reinforcing skills that students are going to have as they continue to progress and matriculate forward. So this, once again, this is a must-have. I guess we could also say this also goes back to inequity, where you've got 2 of the middle schools with and 1 without. So we need to balance this out. The novice teacher coaches. Now, when I took this position, or was elected to this position, I really wasn't 100% sure what a novice teacher or coach was. I said, what's the difference between that and a mentor? A mentor could be the teacher next door classroom who has a load that they're working and they're doing their workload. And then if time allows, they'll come over and they'll help out and mentor. The novice teacher coach really focuses in on those new teachers who've only been there for a year, who don't have any experience as teachers. So these coaches are going to focus in on making sure that they are doing the right types of things in accordance with the law, and they know what right is, and to help build them. This also helps with our retention. We empower, we build them up. It will also help with our recruiting and our retention of these new teachers. And if we do this right, we will hold on to them, and we won't keep coming back every other year asking for more teachers, because we're growing our own. So it's important to have. School counselor, this is a question of law, and the law clearly says that you have to have a certain number of counselors, and right now, to be within SOQ compliance, we have to have 1 counselor per 325 students, and right now we're barely in compliance. I got to be careful with that.
We are compliant. However, the position, the 14th counselor, is ESSER funded. So we need the funding in order to maintain compliance.
So, again, this is a request for those individuals who are going to be in the classroom. I've listened and I've heard many folks ask, okay, we're getting all this money. How is that going to impact those kids in the classroom? How are we going to get successful outcomes? Well, here's how we do that. And you can clearly see that we are focusing in specifically on the tactical level, making sure that we have the right folks in these classrooms. So your support is helpful. And of course, I believe, Marcia, correct me if I'm mistaken, this comes out to basically $1,047,799.37. Questions?
I actually have a question. On the, do you have for the math specialist and 2 novice teacher coaches, especially the math specialist, do you have a math specialist at the high school?
We do not, but interestingly enough, at last night's school board meeting, we have just entered into an agreement with Old Dominion University, and we will be paying through HR tuition reimbursement monies for 5 educators to receive their math specialist, either master's and or endorsement. And the goal will be upon completion, because they are not out there growing on trees, believe it or not, will be to employ them K-12. Because as you know, Mr. Black, being a teacher, we have new standards next year for ELA and for math. So it is essential that we have these content experts in the buildings.
And as of last night, we have 3 that have signed up.
3 applicants.
Applicants who've signed up.
Oh, 4.
I'm sorry, 4.
Great.
That's today.
So that's something where y'all cover their tuition or expenses to get that?
Everything but textbooks. They have to have a little skin in the game. We're actually closing out a reading specialist degree right now through William and Mary, and there are 11 participants in that cohort. So we're very excited and already reaping the benefits in the classrooms of those 11 educators.
And a commitment to remain with Caroline.
3 years.
That's great.
Great. And they get the stipend for having a master's degree. So it's a win-win.
Now, just out of curiosity,
If for just the certificate or the endorsement, do they get a stipend, a lesser stipend?
If they have a master's and they add the endorsement, Ms. Foster, is there any additional increase?
Master's plus 15 is the next increase.
Thank you.
do you have specialists in any other subject areas? Like, do you have social studies specialist or English specialist, or do you have any specialists in subject areas?
At central office for curriculum writing and serving as liaisons to the buildings, we have ELA, we have math, science, and history. We have one of each, with the exception of right now we're using all-in funds through the Virginia Literacy Act to pay for a second ELA to help us get all of the science of reading off the ground.
My only skepticism here, and I think I've told you this before, is if we're hiring one of these specialists or whatever, then there needs to be a direct correlation between the specialist and test scores. I mean, wouldn't you agree that if we're hiring a specialist to be a math specialist, wouldn't you think that these test scores in said schools would go up?
And they have. The 2 elementary schools, Bowling Green and Madison, we have had increasing math scores, but much of their time, while they do intervention with students, research shows that the most effective use of specialists is in the coaching model, so that you're imparting your skills and your knowledge through modeling and coaching and co-teaching and lesson planning with Mr. Kelly, and then Mr. Kelly's then able to replicate that for years to come.
But in turn, that should indirectly, so we should see a trend in test scores if these are funded. So in other words, if we do a math specialist, then we should see a trend in scores where they are of going up.
Yes, with the caveat that, of course, anytime you start new standards, 24, 25 standards, you have that natural implementation dip, and then you move forward with that upward progression.
I understand where the chairman is going. You want to see outcomes from, or return on the investment.
Yes.
In the long run. And I think the symbiotic relationship that you're going to have between the coaches, the mentors, and the programs that you've heard, we should see an increase in student performance, leading to higher standardized test scores, which will make us all very happy, as well as quite a few many parents as well. So yes, I understand exactly where you're coming from.
Okay. Are there any additional questions regarding gen ed positions? Hearing none, we move on to budget priority number 4, transportation. Y'all forgive me, I forgot who had that. Who was transportation? Ms. Sears?
Good afternoon. So this is our 4th priority, which is bus drivers, and moving 30 bus drivers from a part-time position to a full-time position. We did a survey, and the majority of those included in the survey really wanted to move from part-time to full-time. They also wanted to have to opt in for health insurance and health insurance +1. Bus drivers are so important. I mean, you know, this is how we get our children to our schools, and I think moving part-time to full-time is a move for retention to keep those people here. And as you know, there is busing issues. My own kids included were late today because of staffing and busing problems. So that is why this is one of our priorities.
And if I could interject, some of the benefits that our bus drivers then would have access to are not only the greater insurance premiums, meaning that they're far more affordable, but they also then are eligible for Virginia Retirement System and can start earning VRS, and that is very valuable. And then, of course, we reduce the overtime pay. And if you look, you can see we have 13 to 15 drivers every single month that are working in overtime and or time and a half status. So I think that's been a story that I've heard from Sheriff Mosier in the past in relation to vacancies and having to work on the vacancies in the sheriff's office because they were paying overtime. And so I think it's very comparable, obviously different setting, but a similar scenario that we need to beef up this category of employee.
If I could just, I'm sorry, if I could just, okay, raise your hand. If I could just say it, I was riding through Spotsylvania, and there are buses in front of all the schools asking for drivers and advertising the salary. So again, this is another effort that we make to try to eliminate the situation with our bus drivers.
And recognizing the environment that we're in, King George County has part-time employees, but the pay for those drivers is more. They're part-time. Hanover County, also part-time. We're offering full-time opportunities, perhaps a richer product in the end that's actually a bit more attractive, job security, and a steady income. And the morale, I think, we have to look at that as well. We can't underestimate that. If we keep happy drivers, we keep a healthy team, I think we'll have some good lines going down the road.
Do you have any idea what the delta is between your overtime pay and these people are full-time, what that delta will be?
Shift that over to Mrs. Stevens. I don't know if you know that off the top of your
I
head.
don't have it off the top of my head, but I do have it in doing this calculation of 385,000, so I will be able to provide.
Say that again.
I said I don't have it off the top of my head, but I do have it in my records at the office based on calculating this 385, so I can provide that as a follow-up item.
Okay.
Any additional questions?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Just a couple of things to make sure I understand. The total at the top of that page, 1.04. That's the running total you're having, or that's
No,
what the
sir.
page-
That was actually from
category.
priority 3, and I didn't recognize when I printed that it carried over.
Okay, no
Sorry.
problem. I just want to make sure. And the other question I have with regard to transportation. Last year, I recall that you added, I think I had a discussion with Mrs. Stevens, you added $100,000 for transportation for cost of fuel.
Mm-hmm.
Was there any budget calculation this year for cost of fuel?
There was.
Yeah. What was it?
Don't know off the top of my head. We add it to the budget. I will pull that and provide that to you also.
Was it just an ad, or was it a calculation of gas prices are X, mileage is X?
We were looking at what we had spent last year and looking at the prices that we were currently running.
Okay.
And right now we are holding steady. We're
Just okay.
just okay. We're hoping we
Emphasize
don't.
just.
I noticed the pump increased 20 cents on me the other day when I went to town and came back out. So we are hoping the increase that we did, we are going to make us through. Now overtime, we're having a problem. So, but fuel, we look like we're coming right in at the line based on what we're projecting.
I've worked in some companies where there might be 15 people doing similar roles, but half are full-time and half are contract. This scenario could be full-time as an incentive, or you reward your ones that don't call in a lot, or that are willing to do the extra activities after school with full-time. I mean, it's not you don't have to do everything for everybody if it's not warranted, I guess is what I'm saying.
Right.
At least in my mind.
And this is converting only 30 of our fleet, so it's not taking everyone. It is still providing those.
Total number of regular drivers.
We have 70-some drivers.
70-some buses.
On buses, we have additional car drivers.
And you have substitute bus drivers like you have substitute teachers?
We do, but it's very hard to get them. So we only have about 2 of them at this time, but absolutely.
You're always wanting.
We're always wanting more.
Recruit.
Just out of curiosity, how many of do all the bus drivers have an assistant on the bus? Is that just for the elementary students or none of them?
Only our students with special needs that are on buses that require supports to meet their IEP needs have assistance.
Any additional questions? Moving on to the last item, safety. Mr. Fortune?
Good afternoon, everyone. Of course, safety is, I believe, one of the most critical needs that we need to meet with respect to those who have elected us. And I know the Board of Supervisors feels the same as reflected in the public safety positions that are in the proposed Board of Supervisors budget. But we want to do all that we can to make sure that not only our students but also our staff are safe in school. Our faculty and staff can't be their best selves, and our students can't learn unless we provide a safe environment for them. So as you see the CCS related data, we really wanted to take a holistic approach as how best to carry our mandate forward with respect to safety. The data shows that the incidents at CHS and CMS with respect to discipline, and also the threat assessments for the prior year. Given these data points, we tried to develop a plan to mitigate these concerns. As you can see, we looked at weapon detectors, as Dr. Kirkberg alluded, based on our research. That option seems to be cost prohibitive at this point. So we wanted to look at the next best option to ensure the safety of our students and our faculty. We took a holistic approach in trying to devise a plan, and as you can see, we sent out a survey that elicited feedback from all of our stakeholders, to include our parents and our faculty. And what we are proposing is to hire 2 school safety officers. We've got overwhelming support from our parents to make this request. And as you can see, 1 school safety officer would be deployed at Caroline Middle School, 1 at Caroline High School, and they will work hip to hip with our SROs to ensure that there's a even greater presence in our building with respect to our adults, making sure that our students and our staff are safe. And as noted, the cost of these 2 positions would total $137,326. And the individuals that would be hired in these roles would be CCPS employees, and we would be in a position to make sure that they're trained properly, and also that they will perform the duties that we deem necessary to make sure that everyone is safe in those particular buildings. Are there any questions?
I'm just curious, what kind of training will they have coming in?
Question. They actually are trained through the Department of Juvenile Justice. And so Mr. Wick, as our safety and compliance officer, would be their direct supervisor, but they would go to that training, receive that certification before working within our buildings. And then, of course, we would sit with Sheriff Mosier and talk about what that partnership would look like. We'd go back to our MOU and make any modifications that would be necessary. This is a very common practice across the nation. We are blessed in Caroline to have an SRO in every building. That is very much like a unicorn. I'm the first to sing that from the rooftops. We are so fortunate. But as you can see with the discipline and the threat assessments and that growing need, that one person is no longer sufficient to address some of those everyday scenarios because they can't clone themselves.
And the SROs are limited in their capacity with what they can do within the building.
Also true.
So this is someone who would be on staff and could develop relationships with staff and students, and I can call your parents, I can do all these other things that the SRO really is not going to interject themselves into.
TCJS has a specific SSO program. And in that program, Virginia School Safety Audit Program, how to go about doing that assessment in a school, K through 12 resources, K through 12 school safety and threat assessment, campus public safety, which I think is a little bit more higher education, but it is a certification program. So it's not as if they're just going to go in and, just take over. I mean, they've got to get certified, and with the SSO program, we know that they know what they're doing.
They also do not carry weapons,
Yes, it's a big one.
so
Big one.
that is something to be aware of.
Any weapon of Mazor?
No.
No, sir.
Any additional questions or comments? Any reservations about moving on to the next item on the agenda as we press the time slightly with the discussion of school maintenance? Is that you guys or us guys?
We can, yeah. So
You said you start.
You start. I did.
That was a request by Mr. Thomas. I believe you were looking for some additional information about the maintenance of the gym floor in the middle school.
Maintenance as a whole is another story, but that's probably what I was looking at as a whole. But specifically, I sent an email about the gym floor, and I just wanted you to address that.
Yep, certainly. So in your packet in the back is CMS gym floor. So we did historical data just as all members of the boards were not present at the time. So the gym floor was installed in 2019 at a cost of $91,000, and training took place in January of 2020. Once the floor was installed, the manufacturer recommends a daily sweeping with properly treated dust mop, periodic removal of debris, and cleaning the entire floor with the approved cleaner. And then annually to screen and recoat the new floor at least once a year, and clean up spillages, of course, immediately, and then monitor the humidity levels to be between 30 and 50% relative humidity. Our procedures, we have the staff dust daily with the approved dust pads. We have walk-off mats are placed at the entry points as directed. Any reported spills are directly reported to our custodial staff and administration in order to have them handled and cleaned up quickly. The floor is cleaned as directed with a Bona Super Quart cleaner 3 times a week and sometimes more often. The floor is inspected by the flooring company. The last inspection was done in June of 2023. The floor is screened and recoated with a new fresh coating each year, and that was completed June of 2023. The head custodian, who had that training by the manufacturer in January of 2020, trains her new staff as new staff comes into that school. And then we monitor the humidity levels on the Honeywell automated system to ensure that we have the proper humidity levels in there, and at times, especially when we're high humidity in the summer, we are running those units 24/7 to ensure that we keep the humidity. We do have a decrease in the sign of the floor due to our high usage. There is no warping or cracking in the floor currently. There is a good coat of the polyurethane still existing at this time. The paint's not showing anywhere. There is some minor scratches where the coaches are putting tables and chairs off court, and those scratches will be addressed in the yearly review. We have about 500 students on that floor on a daily basis, and our usage has increased with our sports programming increases. We follow Virginia High School League as even with the middle school when it comes to being able to participate and do conditioning basically off season year round. So they are using it tremendously, and the basketball court is being used about six days a week at least. The community has adult community basketball in there at least 2 days a week. I noticed they were in there last night when we were leaving our school board meeting. And then on the poor weather days, they have gym, of course, come in, and the outside sports come in. So it is a highly used floor, and we are ensuring that our procedures and are following the manufacturer's recommendations from when it was installed.
Do you think maybe the appearance could be improved by increasing the polyurethane application?
The application the next time, I can certainly
Or the
have,
frequency, not just once a year, but maybe twice a year?
certainly we could look at it twice a year. It's getting it shut down for those 2 weeks.
It got a coat in June? It got a coat of polyurethane in June?
23.
23,
Last
once a year.
Last June we had.
We can look at the twice a year. Again, as mentioned, it will be finding a time where we can shut the gym down so it can curate. So I don't know if that would be a winter break scenario, or Mr. Caldwell, you can take a look at that and get back to us as a follow-up item.
Winter break's a hard one because you're right in the middle of basketball season or right towards the tail end of it. So you have a lot of practicing going on, but we can definitely take a look and see where we can fit that, second coating.
Sure, and maybe even discuss with the high school winter break use, and they could shift maybe to use one of the 2 gyms there. So that's definitely feasible to investigate. Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Sure.
Is it middle school basketball season in the springtime?
There's girls and boys, and there's separate seasons.
I think girls are in the fall.
In the winter. I had to pause and think for a minute. If you are willing, it's 5:34. Could we take 5 minutes just solely to review what the board's decision was last evening, so you are cognizant of that information before you go in to the Diaz conversation? Everyone comfortable with 5 minutes? Okay, I appreciate that gift of time. We do have our representative here from McClure, so we also thought he will be with us during the regularly scheduled meeting. So if questions do come up, you're welcome to pose those, and he is happy to come to the podium or to come forward now. But if we could please pull up the presentation, that would be helpful from last night, just as a guide, not to go through slide by slide, but last evening, there was a vote 5-1 to move forward with option 3, which of course, if we can minimize the item on the right-hand side, thank you, which is inclusive of all of 1 and all of 2, and then also includes the high school humidity. So essentially, it is the HVAC system replacement, and then in option 2, it's the HVAC system replacement plus all of the LED lighting plus the envelope of the buildings. And to the right, option 3 includes everything I've just mentioned plus the humidity scenario. I wanted to make sure that we were really clear about the amount of money that we believe we have accessible to us. That is inclusive of proffers. We did, of course, look at your Davenport report that became accessible in the last 24 hours. We understand there's some discussion associated with appropriating or not appropriating that. But for today, for this conversation, we did.
The board's had no discussion.
Oh, okay.
I just anticipated if it came up that they wanted to borrow that.
Okay.
So I had Davenport look at it. Board's not discussed anything, so that's probably not even something they know.
Okay, well.
That's for later on.
FYI.
If there was some issue.
We reviewed your document. Sorry, Mr. Cully, I didn't mean to throw that out.
I don't want to clarify it, because they probably all wondering, what are you talking about? But yeah, I figured that both ways.
Docs, so that's, we did receive it from Ms. Smith.
Oh, no, we gave it to you, but I'm just saying, they really haven't talked about it. It was just, in case that question came up, I wanted Davenport to know about it.
Okay, thank you so much for that clarification.
I'm not seeing any solar on this.
This does include solar. That's where the savings comes from, the 20-year energy and operational savings. So all of this is inclusive of the solar plan. There is no cost to solar for the installation. The warranty isn't impacted. If the roof is damaged, that is addressed by McClure. And then if the savings aren't realized, then McClure owns that difference and either writes a check, or if it's in the middle of the 20-year lifespan, they ultimately might modify equipment to see if they can close that gap. but at the end of each year, they will, make good on the commitment of the savings.
I would personally like to see this same numbers without the installation of the solar. Just to have, just to understand what they are.
Sure, and I
Doesn't have to be now, I'm just,
Okay.
for our discussion later is fine.
okay, we can calculate that with no difficulty.
Can I ask a question? The governor's budget has, I think, $2 million in it for construction this year. Is this considered construction?
It is construction, it is capital improvement, but I'll let Marcia speak to the construction component.
The construction that the governor had proposed was a 2-year construction. We are finalizing that as of June 30th, 2024. There is nothing in his new budget or nothing in the General Assembly budget for construction as funding state construction grants in the future at this point.
So you got $2 million last year.
We had $2 million for the past 2 years. We carried over, and we've gone over those projects. One of them is the CHS renovation of the restrooms that are currently taking place at this time. Was a large part of that. Approximately $462,000 is going to this project of what we're expecting to have remaining.
Oh, you only have $400,000 left from the $2 million.
Based, yes.
Correct. Over the 2-year
Over the 2-year cycle. Mm-hmm. Now, if there's more, we will gladly take it. We can put it towards the project,
Yes,
but
no, absolutely.
there's not.
And we also recognize where we are with ESSER, and we're monitoring on a regular basis. And if there is anything beyond the 2.2, and Mr. Sadler, if you could go to the slide that covers our funding sources for CCPS, that might be helpful. We know that if there's anything remaining, it'll just automatically shift right into the HVAC project. So we're not anticipating a large savings. If you'll keep going for me. Oh.
I think it's
More towards the front.
Slide 3.
There we go. So that is reflective of the funding that we anticipate being utilized towards the option 3 that the board had proposed.
Mr. Forehand, the savings for the solar in the scoping right now, scoping phase, is $3,058,000. So each of those projects, the actual cost at the end would be $3,058,000 more.
No, I'd
With
say
solar
I don't think
removed.
that's what he's asked. He wants to know how much of the project you don't do solar. And I thought.
The hard cost of the project does not change if we do not solar.
Because solar's being paid for.
It's 100% paid.
By them, and they're gonna own it, not them, the
McClure.
McClure.
Mm-hmm.
If there was a cost to solar, be it the schools wanted to own the equipment, then you would have to pay up front and borrow the money to put that in, but you would have more savings, but you'd have all the maintenance. Right, so there's the project, the $10 million go back down to the slide we were started with, David. That $10,761,408 is the cost of the project, and that's what you're gonna see from Davenport, that there is a
Correct.
cost to borrow.
And that is,
This won't change.
that is the cost with or without
solar.
Solar does
Solar
not
just
cost
brings
us
back
anything.
savings to the schools.
There's a $0 investment.
The number that would
CCPS
change if we
for
don't
that.
do solar is these numbers, and that will reduce by $3 million.
Correct.
You're saying the 20-year energy operation savings would be reduced by $3 million
Without solar.
Yes.
And if that were the case, then the project cost goes up $3 million, right?
The actual project cost would be different.
Yeah, but well, no, your savings is savings. We are gonna borrow, if you do option 3, $10,761,04, which we got money. So that total borrowing.
But your annual expenditures would go.
It's $5,971,528 over 20 years.
But you wouldn't see an annual decrease, so you talked before about
Well, they have to figure out
modifying
what
the allocation of the school division based upon the savings that you
Right,
get.
there may be some savings to help pay that, but Right, borrowing cost does not change.
Correct,
That-
it
that
does not
doesn't
change.
change at
Borrowing
all.
does not change.
And your hard cost does not
I
change.
think that was what he was thinking,
Yeah.
we could borrow less if the
Yeah.
solar's not in there, and I didn't think that at all.
Now, if we did go the other route with solar,
It
where
would go
we
up.
owned it,
It would go up.
it was about 16 million, I
Substantially
believe,
more.
was the initial cost of the project. We, of course, would see much more savings, but then you have the risk of all the other stuff, owning
Tell me
it,
again the
disposing
benefit
it.
of the solar park. Tell me the savings, where do we see the savings? Is that at the end when it says actual project?
No,
What are you talking about?
Yeah, cause it's in their utility bills, so they would pay less
You would
for
see it in the
Dominion
utility
or
bills.
REC, whoever's applying.
So we spend less in electricity, and like Mr. Cully said, he could modify the allocation that goes to the school division based on the fact that we're not spending as much on our utilities.
And that is something we would like to
So
have.
we
more
would have
discussion
a
about.
discussion about the modification of money to us.
Until the
but-
electricity costs go up. But yeah.
I mean, theoretically, we could say we
But
take some money
it's
back.
not- it's not
Or we
theoretical.
could say we leave the money the same and you use that for teacher raises.
Right.
Well, yeah,
That,
but
that would be lovely.
the amount of money, the amount of money that we've been guaranteed that there would be a savings on our end, that's ironclad contract. They're either gonna give us a check for the difference, or they're going to change the way that their operating system goes. Regardless, we will see those savings in what we spend every year for our utilities.
So we gotta borrow $4.5 million?
If you do project,
Well, that's three.
borrowing amount, $5,971,000, that's a public financing, interest cost you $3,326,000. Total cost over the life of the 20 years, $9,096,000.
What's it per year?
Need a number,
The next to
but
last one.
3B. So 3B is the project they're recommending, which has all three things in it.
We actually prefer 3A. Is that, Mr. Colley, 3A? Are you talking about on your sheet?
Oh, maybe I did have the wrong one.
No,
That's
it's
what,
3A.
that's what.
3A.
Oh, 3A, we saw it today.
Right now you're right.
3A, sorry.
I do
Yeah.
want to point out, there is a typo, Tamika, excuse me, Ms. Smith, on 3A.
Sorry, yeah, look
Where it
wrong.
says 4.78 million at the top, that I believe should read the 6.1, because I think all of the A's were you providing the proffer, just for clarity. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, 3B is if we take the proper money and finance that too.
But then when you look on the last page, that leaves us with a $2 million loss. So that didn't seem very viable. The 3B.
Borrowing amount's 4.6 million.
And I just want to be very clear too, on the IGA that McClure proposed, we are still working with REC and all that with the solar. That is only in the scoping phase, that is not in the guaranteed savings phase. So all the construction, the building envelope, the lighting, all of that in the CHS is already in the investment grade audit phase. That is the solid savings that is being proposed. The
That's where they see it.
solar is still in that whole process and works out as the timeline that they had presented during the
Well, now you got.
during the
Was
meetings.
there a lighting upgrade to Lewis and Clark in the last year or so?
Not in the,
Exterior lighting?
oh.
Exterior lighting, we did do some exterior lightings with the security grant at several of our buildings for exterior.
There's a lot more light coming from the building.
There is. Inside, as soon as you
Inside,
walk in,
no.
it's very dark.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for giving us the extra time. We just thought it was important for you to have insight as to the discussion last night, and hopefully that will be helpful. We also wanted you to know that McClure is here should you have any more technical questions that we're not well equipped to necessarily respond to.
And the gentleman from McClure, Mr. Chris, he is on Zoom. He is very ill at this time, so he was not able to travel down from Pennsylvania today. However, he will be willing to answer any questions that you all have based on solar.
All right, is that it?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Motion adjourned. All right, I will, we're all done? I'll take a motion from the board of supervisors to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Motion and a second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Is there a motion for the school board to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconded. Any discussion?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.